meat and potatoes. Not just a deep dive, it's the deepest dive into Minnesota Vikings football.
And that deep dive is going to go extremely deep today. The Vikings, of course, lost to the Rams last Thursday. We are going to look ahead. There's a couple of talkers. One, the Vikings will play the Colts on Sunday night at US Bank Stadium. Two, the trade deadline is a week from today, a week from Tuesday. It's Zolgad, AJ Fredrickson co-hosting, producing, and, of course, the star of the show, our guy, Tyler Forness. Give him a big wave. Does a great job covering the Vikings A to Z sports and breaking things down. He is our meat and potatoes guy. But before we start, I want to give a quick shout out to the exclusive personal injury law firm of Purple Daily. That is, of course, our friends at Nickolay Law. Nickolay Law knows that when your loved one gets injured, ordinary life, it can come to a stop and things can get complicated. During that time, the insurance companies are going to pressure you. They don't care if you get better. They don't care if your bills are piling up, and they don't care that you may not be able to work. But our friend Russ right there and Nickolay Law, they do care. They've seen every play the insurance companies have, and they'll make sure you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. So if you've been injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nickolay. Start your path to winning at NickolayLaw.com. That's NICOLET law.com. Or give them a call, 1-855-NICKOLAY, 1-855-NICOLET. Let Russ and his team make things right for you. Speaking of making things right, Forno, let's get right into it. Christian Darrisaw is lost now. That's a huge loss. He is a guy that, is being paid like, and we all agree, one of the best left tackles in the game. So we could talk about his, potential replacements. Does Brandle kick out to left guard and Reisner go to left tackle and Reisner go to left guard? Do they start Questenberry? Do they sign a guy? But I like your approach. What does Kevin O'Connell have to do from a play calling and game planning standpoint to adjust to the loss of Darrisaw, which ultimately, because you're not going to truly replace a guy that good, is probably going to be the most important thing. What needs to happen here?
You have to modify your offensive approach somewhat. And one of the really great things about the Minnesota Vikings passing game is in neutral situations. So basically when the game is not out of hand, 10 to 90% win probability. So like a lot of like the second half against the Houston Texans would be eliminated. Those final drives of the Niners and Packers eliminated from that as well. And it essentially talks about your game script and how are you handling things in normal situations. The Vikings are number one in EPA per dropback in the National Football League at 0.307 as estimated points added per play. They like to run deeper concepts. They like to have Sam Darnold drop back in the pocket and fire downfield 15 yards. And when you do that consistently, it puts a lot of pressure on your offensive line, which they held up really well. They have ESPN's 8th best pass block win rate, which I don't necessarily love as a stat when talking about all context of offensive line play because it's a time-based thing. But when you're talking about this context, when you're talking about having a offensive line that's protecting for 3+ seconds, this is where that metric comes in really handy and helps you really quantify how well an offensive line is performing based on what you're asking them to do. And Sam Darnold has the number one time to throw in the National Football League. He's not a scrambler. He can scramble, but he's not going to intentionally create all the time. His play style, he wants to stay in the pocket. And then when he does scramble, half the time is this he's trying to spin around and bail out to his left. And he got sacked multiple times in the Rams game because of it. And I just wanted to stop doing that, but that's another case in point entirely. But if you're the Vikings, you have to be a little concerned about the fact that, hey, you don't have Darrisaw. A lot of your protections you can build around guys like Darrisaw and O'Neal because of their strengths. Now you have a guy who's going to be, for lack of a better term, a liability in comparison. So whether it's Blake Brandle, whether it's David Questenberry, whether it's Walter Rouse, who I think it's not going to happen unless the Vikings are eliminated from the playoffs, or an outside guy. Doogie mentioned on the Scoop session earlier today, DJ Humphries. I thought DJ Humphries, when I wrote about it yesterday on Monday, was a great idea because he played 15 games. He was very solid for the Cardinals, but he tore his ACL the week after TJ Hawkinson did. So he tore it on December 31st. He's ready to go, and you can bring him in on a prorated deal. Hey, give him an incentive-laden contract where it's not likely to be earned incentives, and then you can push it off in next year if he earns them, and he has a chance to make more money. I think Humphries is probably your best option there. I'd still call on David Bakhtiari. If he's healthy, he's probably the best option, but that health factor is a major concern because there's a reason he's not a member of the Green Bay Packers anymore. And no matter what, I think you just have to implement more quick game. You have to get screens. You have to run speed outs, whip routes, slants, drags. Find ways to get the ball in your playmakers' hands and let them create after the catch. They do a really good job of that with Aaron Jones in the screen game. But I think with the return of TJ Hawkinson, maybe you get some tight end screens. A couple times they've run them this year, they've been very impactful. Now, I know that might be like, oh, tight end screens are bad. No, the Vikings just ran them too much, and teams were able to figure it out the first couple years of Kevin O'Connell's tenure. They haven't run them much this year. So that can be an extra layer of that. Plus, with Hawkinson coming back, you can just spam wide choice across the middle of the field and create another layer of your offense. So even though you lose Darrisaw, adding Hawkinson's probably going to help that time to throw go down just a little bit, help with some of the underneath stuff. But you have to run more of that because you have to alleviate pressure from your offensive line. You have to find ways to mitigate the loss of Christian Darrisaw and make it less impactful. You're not going to replace him. You're not going to do a 1-to-1. If DJ Humphries comes in, he can be very solid, maybe get close to a Pro Bowl level. Darrisaw was playing at like an all-pro kind of level. And if you were able to mitigate that enough, like, don't give up on this team.
And so with like that liability that you're saying that they're going to bring in, and somebody's going to have to be there for the time being, who do you expect to maybe get more involved with those, getting the ball out of Darnold's hands a little quicker? I know you mentioned the tight end screens for Hawkinson. I know fans have been dealing with the hashtag #free3 Jordan Addison saga that's been on social media here recently. Is this an opportunity to maybe get him more involved with a quick slant or something across the middle with, he's a good route runner. He is speedy. That can maybe get him more involved. Or is that just, hey, we're going to get the ball to Justin Jefferson, or we've had the screens with Aaron Jones? Who do you think out of that skill position group is going to maybe step up now that the ball has to get out of his hands a little quicker?
Everybody. I don't think this, AJ, is a situation where it's just one guy needs to step up and one guy needs to do this. They need to be smarter about and more calculated about how they scheme things open. They need to get the ball out of Darnold's hands quicker. One of the things with like young quarterbacks, and something they did with Kirk Cousins a lot when he was here, get in a rhythm. One of the first plays consistently for Kirk Cousins in the passing game, play action, bootleg, dump off to the tight end. That sucker get 10 to 20 yards. Easy, gets you in a rhythm, gets you comfortable, and all of a sudden, hey, now you can start cooking with gas. And you can feel like, hey, I'm in the game, I'm good. Now let's get the momentum rolling a little bit. Do some of that. Do some of the basic play calls. Run stick. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We don't have to get ultra creative. Sometimes the basic stuff works really well. Get these guys involved, like speed outs. You see them running quarters, or like guys with a deep third, like sell vertically for 5 yards, then round it out and then just go to the sidelines. Hey, 5-6 yards on first down, successful play. Just do some of that. And then as you continue to hit the quick game, then guess what they're going to do? They're going to cheat on the quick game a little bit. Now you can double move them. Now you can maybe do some of those max protect shots that we saw a lot with Gary Kubiak, with Kevin Stefanski, where you'd have two guys in the route concept and they continuously hit Adam Thielen on like those crazy post corner post routes. You can hit guys on those super deep overs because you have some of those other elements already built in. Like, there are ways to build on what you've done, what you haven't done, and you can use some of that quick game to open up some of the deeper elements of the passing game. Because you know what? If they know they're going to hit you quick, teams are likely going to be less apt to want to blitz you, because guess what? You're getting the ball out in 1.5 seconds. Well, I better play press coverage.
Exactly. Well,
now,
this is why
where you do slant and goes.
This is why the loss, in my opinion, the loss of Darrisaw is the biggest test for O'Connell, because he's going to have to like this is like, I mean, they have gotten a lot from Sam. I mean, Darnold, he's got a ceiling, and I think he's near it. Like, I don't think that there's another, 15, 20%, but I do think that if you implement what you're talking about, that is going to, one, help him, and two, for the survival of him and your offense, be absolutely necessary. The two things that I think become real options are tight end screens with Hawkinson back, because the most incredible stat I found, and I know that he's played in 2 fewer games, but I don't care. Jordan Addison has 14 catches. Naylor has 14. Guess what? Johnny Munn has 14. So, like, if you look at that, I think that, if you were going to throw the ball, if you have 14 completions to Munt, Hawkinson could, if he comes back and is completely healthy, go absolutely nuts. That's good. And two is you finally have a running back that can catch passes. So, like, there are ways to get the ball out. It's not like, oh my God, what are you going to do now? You actually have that, which I think is huge. But this to me is going to be, if anything, Forno, a referendum on O'Connell's play calling and adaptability, because he's got buddies in this league who do a marvelous job of adapting. LaFleur adapts. McVay adapts. Now it's his turn to say, okay, my left tackle's gone. My quarterback can only do so much. What can I do to basically midstream help him as much as possible? And I think what you're talking about is 1000% it. And if they don't, I think they're going to create a lot of unnecessary problems. And the nice thing is, this offense got a lot of talent. Like, you got a lot of skill. You got a lot of really good, adaptable players. So I don't think what you're saying is like some huge ask. I think it's pretty much common sense.
Yeah, the adaptability is going to be a really, really big thing, Judd, because you need to show that willingness to grow and adapt. And I think there have been a lot of times where Kevin O'Connell's done a fantastic job of doing just that, of finding ways to utilize the talent that he has, finding ways to minimize the impact of other elements that are surrounding him. I think the 2022 season, I think they did a really good job of adapting with Kirk Cousins and with the run game and utilizing the players that he had. Guys like Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, who, let's be real, fine players. They weren't nearly what a lot of people thought they were. And Thielen was on this major downturn of his career. Last year, I wanted to see a little bit more adaptation from Kevin O'Connell when Kirk Cousins went down. I thought he could have done a better job of utilizing Josh Dobbs in the run game. But some of that is also difficult, too, because you can have like a catch-22 argument where Dobbs doesn't even know the offense.
Right.
And how can you install new elements in the offense and have all 11 guys learning when one guy, the number one guy, doesn't even know how to basically call simple plays in this offense? So there are a lot of different things when it comes to the creative element here. And I'm going to be fascinated, like you said, to see how he adapts and how he's going to compensate for the loss of Darrisaw. Because one of the interesting things I found, since Darrisaw made his debut, so he missed the first 4 games of his rookie season. I'm not counting those because that's not, he had never played before. We had never seen this offense with Darrisaw.
Sure.
The Vikings are 4-3 without him and 3-2 with Kevin O'Connell on at the helm. So they understand how to adapt without Christian Darrisaw.
Right.
Blake Brandle, when he was the starter for a few games in 2022, they did a really good job of chipping. They did a really good job of mitigating Brandle's biggest weakness, which is dealing with speed. He can't deal with speed. That's why moving inside to guard made a lot of sense and why he succeeded there. Because once he gets you in his grasp, he will beat you. And he's really good at that. But the problem is with some of these speed rushers, he can't kick step far enough. And with this new shift and this point of emphasis from the officials of how to line up and making sure you are super, super close to the line of scrimmage and actually on the line without cheating, it makes it even more difficult. He did allow 7 sacks and 13 pressures. Questenberry last year across 300 and I think it was like 336. I might be off by a couple of snaps. Pass block or snaps last year, split between left and right tackle. He allowed 16 pressures, but only 1 sack. Questenberry is capable. Because remember, he had to start, 4 games at right tackle last year because Brian O'Neill had, I think it was a high ankle sprain.
Yep.
Like, Quessenberry's fine.
Right.
And I think when you have a game plan that adjusts for that backup player, I think you're going to see him be less of an issue. Right now, I'd roll with Quessenberry. And I would prefer to fix one position than rather create a hole at another to fix that. Like Brandle, you could move out to left tackle. And sure, Reisner was the left guard last year, so it's not as big of an issue. But I'd rather just replace one. And I think Quessenberry, for right now, should be the guy because it creates less variables for your offense.
And you mentioned like the adaptability they're going to have on the offensive side of the ball here with the left tackle predicament. We are now learning here in the middle of recording that it's being reported by Ina Rappaport that the Colts are planning to start Joe Flacco on Sunday night against the Vikings, sending Anthony Richardson to the bench. On Tuesday here now as we record, how does Brian Flores need to adapt to what Joe Flacco brings as the savvy veteran compared to what he could have possibly been game planning for the kind of mobile, electrifying athleticism Anthony Richardson? How does everything change here for the Vikings defense on Sunday night, guys?
First off, I think this is catastrophic for Anthony Richardson. I think benching him is a humongous mistake. I do think
or Shane Steichen.
I think Steichen's doing wrong by him. I think Richardson still has a ways to go, but we knew these things coming out. His biggest thing was he didn't have reps. He started 13 games at Florida. He played in a total of 21, he had 455 pass attempts in college. Then he gets the NFL. He started 10 games. He's on a Josh Allen type development curve. You have this uber talented guy who at his peak is probably the best quarterback we've ever seen.
That's why there's a good chance that it's going to be a bigger blow to Shane Steichen because they're going to look at that draft pick. I believe 4, correct?
Yep.
Overall, I don't think they're going to say, hey, you know what? He busted too bad. I love Joe Flacco starting. I think the people that run the Colts are going to say, what the hell is going on? So because you do not give up. Now, for this particular game, I don't know. And yeah, it seems to be a mess, but you don't give up. But yeah, what does this change as far as the switch to go from a guy who is incredibly athletic and spotty to a guy who is almost 40, less spotty, but you know, he still can't move great in Joe Flacco. So
I think controlled aggressiveness is going to be really smart here. One of the big things with Richardson is like when you watch the game against the Texans, he was let down by his receivers a lot. He had some throws that were like, all right, dude, you should be able to make this a little bit easier. You should be able to have good footwork. But he's hitting guys in the hands. Guys are not helping him by coming down with touchdown passes. Like this receiver core for the Colts is pretty brutal as far as what their performance has been. You can't have that. And you know what? How is that going to change with Joe Flacco? Richardson's hitting him in the hands, and they're not bringing it in. So, like, Richardson's got plenty of his own problems, but it's being absolutely extrapolated by the fact that this receiver core is not playing well. Flacco's going to give you a couple. He's going to give you a couple opportunities to intercept the football. He's going to give you a couple to change the game, flip the script, per se.
Sudden change.
But,
4-0.
Yeah. He's going to be a much better operator of the quick game. He's going to be a much more calm presence in the pocket. Now, Richardson's got great pocket presence, but as far as being able to identify and then make reads with good footwork, the footwork aspect is something Richardson does not have down yet. And I don't know if this necessarily makes them a better team, makes them a different team. And I think by announcing this on Tuesday, it gives Brian Flores and this coaching staff time to really dissect, because remember, Flacco's gotten some extensive playing time this year. He has one start. He has extended time in another game as well, because Richardson, I believe it was either a shoulder or a rib injury where he missed a decent amount of time. They're going to have the time to be able to attack, but I think you don't want to be too aggressive because Joe Flacco is okay enough to beat you over the top. He's not on a Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford level.
Right.
But let Joe Flacco make the mistakes. Don't make your own is kind of how I would form it.
I like it. Last part of this discussion points. next Tuesday. Yes, it's the day that America votes, but just as importantly or more so, it's the day that the National Football League votes on who gets traded and who does not. This league has gifted us by moving back the deadline a week, which I love because I think it is going to create the potential for more activity. We've talked about this, but as we near the deadline itself, Forno, what is your opinion of what the Vikings are going to do, should do, and the position that's now been thrown in that I think we've all dismissed is I don't think you're going to give up a future asset or a draft pick for a left tackle, but I think we're all on board with defensive help, especially if it comes under team control beyond this season.
Oh, absolutely. I think if you're going to make a trade, it's going to be one of two things. One, you're going to trade a late round pick for a stopgap type player, or two, you're going to trade significant draft capital in order to get a piece for the future. I've laid out quite a few different ones. I'm still not sold that Jeffrey Simmons isn't available because it's not about what people are reporting. It's how they are wording it.
Oh, interesting.
The wording of these reports, they don't intend to trade Jeffrey Simmons.
Right.
I don't expect Jeffrey Simmons to be available via trade.
Right.
That kind of ambiguity is really important when it comes to these reports from insiders. And that's not to say that they're wrong, but it sends a mixed message, doesn't it? The Vikings didn't have any intentions of trading Stephon Diggs or Percy Harvin, did they? Right. And Rick Spielman did not vehemently deny, no, we're not trading him. They always leave the door cracked open just a little bit to send a message to other teams. Hey, we'll take calls. Give us your best offer. And
no one's unplugging that phone from the wall is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Or, turning off that iPhone. That's the thing, though. If somebody gives them an offer that they can't refuse, I think they're going to be willing to take it.
What would it take to get him? So what would be if you were in Kwesi's chair and you wanted to get Jeffrey Simmons away from the Titans, what would you be willing to pay right now? And just to be clear, knowing that you have control as well, so it's not just a stopgap.
I'd send 2 firsts if they send a kicker back. Like a second or third round pick or like a third and a fourth. Like something where I'm getting a little bit back, and that's where the TJ Hawkinson trade comes into play, right? Because the Vikings didn't give up a second and a third. They got 2 fourths.
Right.
And I would be willing to give up 2 firsts because, one, it's very hard to find defensive tackles that are this kind of pass rusher.
Yep.
2, they almost never hit the market, which is one of the reasons why I wrote about how their bet about the defensive tackles, like 1 or 2 making the market. This is a perceived bet. This is kind of how I view it. It's failed. The best one is Oso Digizua, who could be one of those players that, hey, maybe we give up a 4th in 2026 and give him that 10-game sample size in this defense and say, hey, maybe we can extend this guy and he can be a good player for us. Like, that's a possibility. I like Oso Digizua, and he's gotten a lot of pressure.
Off your tongue really well. I don't think I could do that.
It gets easy. Let me tell you. And having a guy like Odigizua, he's an interior pass rusher. He's like 285 pounds, 6'2", good football player. And you can use him like across your defensive line. Like, I don't know if he would if he's going to be this elite level player, but you get a second Harrison Smith level player on this defensive line.
Right.
That makes an incredible impact because of where we're at. I love Jonathan Bullard. Phenomenal in the run game this year. He's not giving you anything in the pass rush. This is not 2014 at the University of Florida Jonathan Bullard we're talking about. Jerry Tillery has been fine. I think he's been worth the $3.5 million, but I don't want that guy to be a starter. I want that guy to be a rotational guy.
Yeah.
And if you get somebody like an Odigizua, you can put him in as the starter and have Tillery be the rotational guy. And then you feel way better about it. But a guy like Simmons, 2 firsts with a kickback, because I think that's the important thing. You got to get a kickback or a 1st this year, a 3rd next year, something along those lines. Because when you have the rookie quarterback in place and you have the type of roster the Vikings do, you don't want to give away draft picks. This is not going full Rams. Full Rams is giving up draft pick after draft pick after draft pick to keep chasing veterans, to keep chasing that magical dragon. You don't want to do that. But if you do it in a calculated manner where, hey, I have this guy, and I think this guy can revolutionize my defense. Because guess what? Coverage is going to matter a little bit less when you have that kind of interior presence in the pass rush.
That's the key. Exactly right.
You can balance things out. If your pass rush is bad, your coverage can't be bad. If your coverage is bad, your pass rush can't be bad. You can't have both be bad, but if one is bad, you can kind of compensate if it takes you longer to get to the quarterback and have great guys on the back end or vice versa.
And this also gets into, I believe we discussed this a week or two ago, and it's still a very important part is, the Vikings are on track to be a playoff team. They are not on track to draft high. And your prognostication or intelligence is that the first round is spotty after a certain point. So like if you were to get a guy and one of the prices was your 2020 a first round pick, but you were to get a guy under contract with term left on, in the middle of the defensive line, that's probably going to be an improvement on anything that you could possibly draft. So that's the other thing. So, I mean, this makes a ton of sense. And yes, if you're not going to get a corner, at least give the corners more of a chance, and immediate pressure from the defensive line up front, especially in the middle, is key. Speaking of college, what should we be watching for as the weekend approaches, as far as college games go? And I guess the most important thing is, as far as right now, with the Vikings having a first round pick, the Vikings and who they should be scouting.
I hope you listened to me last week, Judd. Did you stay up for Boise State UNLV?
I'd like to apologize. I fell asleep.
Oh, that was one of the best college football games we saw all year. Boise State ended up winning 29-24, but man, great football game. And that's a game we may see in the Mountain West title game come December, which I believe that game is on. I believe that game's on my birthday, so you better believe I'll be watching that.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ohio State, Penn State at 11 a.m. is probably going to be your best bet this week as far as college football prospects. It's a real big disappointment that left tackle Josh Simmons isn't going to be playing this game because he injured his knee a couple weeks ago against Oregon and is going to miss the rest of the season. But edge rusher Abdul Carter for Penn State, he's basically Micah Parsons 2.0, was a middle linebacker last year, and they moved him full-time to edge rusher. The dude's explosive. He's long. He's kind of slim. That's why the Micah Parsons comparison really works. He's really good off the ball, but he's great rushing the passer. And the left tackle that they had in there last week against Nebraska was a catastrophe. Judd, you could have done as good of a job at left tackle.
No, I'd be dead.
But that's the thing. That's how bad it was. Plus, Ohio State's got two really good running backs, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, both in A to Z's collective rankings in the top 5. Henderson is a guy that coaches are going to love because not only is he explosive, not only is he fast, Judd, he loves to pass block, and he's really good at it. And that is going to get you drafted higher when you're a running back, because if you can pass block, that tells you, hey, I can play on all 3 downs. Outside of that, there's not a ton of great games. Georgia, Florida is always going to be a good one to watch. I will be glued to that until I go to my wife's aunt's house for dinner. Clemson, Louisville's an interesting one. Clemson's got a couple really good players. Tight end Jake, I think it's Burningstool, something like that. The really, really good player. Cade Klubnik, the quarterback, is an underrated draft prospect right now. He was a consensus 5-star out of Westlake High School in Austin, Texas, and they are one of the powerhouse programs in that Texas 6A high school football. Klubnik has really grown a lot since we saw just an abject disaster against Georgia, but it's Georgia. Georgia does that to a lot of quarterbacks. He's really shown a lot of growth and development. Otherwise, there's not a ton of great prospect games, and there isn't even a Pac-12 after dark kickoff, which is honestly I'm very sad about, because that means I might actually go to bed at a decent hour.
Yeah,
but this is going to be a good.
I'm okay with it.
Watch some rivalry games. Watch Ohio State, Penn State. Enjoy the first Saturday in November, and not a ton of great prospect matchups across the board.
Fair enough. AJ, do we have some questions, some meat and potato related questions for Forno?
Yeah, I'm going to spin zone one of them here because Jonathan didn't see the report, obviously, as he emailed into the show a couple days ago. He was asking about how Brian Flores might game plan for the kind of the two polar opposite quarterbacks of Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. So let me rephrase it in a way where if you had already been game planning for an Anthony Richardson, because it was very much up in the air, you would expect maybe they stick with him. Now that changes on a dime. What is maybe the biggest type of concept that, I mean, we have a lot of film on a guy like Joe Flacco from his years, whether it's the Ravens or now with the Colts. You kind of know exactly what his game and his style is. What sort of concept, if you were Brian Flores, Forno, are you going to be running out there as kind of your default? Is it a Tampa? Is it a cover 3? Like what exactly do you think is going to be the best weapon to stop and mitigate anything Joe Flacco can throw at you?
Well, I'll say this is going to be great. You're not going to have to worry about a spy. Richardson's got great legs and he can bowl you over. Like Flacco's like immobile. So you're going to be able to just try and get home, and you can send guys around the edge without really having to worry about playing contain at all. And I think that's going to be a huge, huge benefit. With these receivers, what you don't want is you don't want them to be able to get you deep, because they love to go deep. This is like that 2022 Eagles offense, which was also run by Shane Steichen, where it's like, hey, hitch, go ball. Like that's been the majority of the offense. I think 20% of Anthony Richardson's throws have been over 20 yards, which is an absurdly high number. I would watch for some of that, but with Joe Flacco in there, I think they're going to try and do a little bit more ball control, run some stick, run some slants, get some out routes going, get some screens working. I think the biggest thing is you got to make sure you tackle these guys in space because they are fast. They're not like Tyreek Hill, Xavier Worthy, where they're small fast. They're like long strider fast. Adonai Mitchell's 6'3". Alec Pierce is 6'4". Like they are bigger football players. So you're going to want to make sure you tackle in space and prevent them from getting yards after the catch.
All right, next one here comes from Jarrett. He says, hey, Forno, Judd, and AJ, I know this is going to sound dumb for an offense that has Justin Jefferson, but is it wrong to say that I feel like the offense runs through Aaron Jones more so at times? Last Thursday, it felt like when they needed a big pickup and some key yardage, he was able to get him, whether it was a handoff or more so in the passing side of things. JJ obviously is the main man, but what is it exactly about this offense that makes it easy to have Jones look like a sure thing for first downs multiple times throughout a game?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And when I looked at it a couple weeks ago, I'm trying to load it up on Sports Info Solutions right now. One of the big things with Aaron Jones is the splits when he's on and off the field. And you can tell that Kevin O'Connell really trusts Aaron Jones. You can tell that he trusts him. You did not get that sense with Ty Chandler or Alexander Madison last year. And this year, you got to really worry about the fact, does he trust Ty Chandler at all? And I don't even know if he trusts Cam Akers, because Akers really didn't play either. So this is an Aaron Jones offense. And one of the reasons why it feels like it runs through him is because it kind of does. When he's on the field and he's playing well, like this offense is on a different level because it changes the way that you have to defend them. It changes the way that, here, I got this pulled up now.
You're saying like his skill set shows why it's so important for an offense to establish the run, because then that opens up, passing options for a Justin Jefferson or eventually a TJ Hawkinson when he's back, or a Jordan Addison, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It changes how you have to guard. And if you have an established run game going, guess what? It's going to make things easier in the passing game because, hey, they're going to cheat a safety up in the box. Maybe you get single high. And some of those single high looks have been where Sam Darnold's really tried to attack down the field. Think that Justin Jefferson touchdown against the Lions, where they had the trips over to the left side, Jordan Addison motions down low, and then Justin Jefferson runs that wheel route, and they end up getting that touchdown. And some of those things are a really big factor in how you can end up making some of those things happen. I am trying to pull up the EPA per play here. All right. Aaron Jones on the field, EPA per play, 0.08. When he's off the field, it's negative 0.16. So a 0.24 points per play difference with Jones on and off the field.
Well,
like,
all right.
That in itself, like the confidence that we talked about with O'Connell in the running game for so long, that's a really good manifestation of that. And if you can get that guy into the box because Aaron Jones is getting you for 6 yards of carry, nobody cares about 6 yards. But guess what? Defenses really care about 6 yards when you're doing it every single play. And they want to stop that 6 yards from happening. Well, guess what? Now you can have Justin Jefferson single coverage to take advantage. Jordan Addison can also beat single coverage. Now you have the element of TJ Hawkinson coming into play. Hawkinson's absence has been so huge these past 2 weeks.
That's why I'm curious about this. Yeah,
they were able to mitigate it really well throughout the first 5 weeks, not the last two. And I think some of those elements, as we kind of wrap this all up into a bow here, Aaron Jones allows you to be so much more versatile and dynamic with both the run and the screen game, and him involved in the pass game. And the defense buys it as a threat, where they don't buy other running backs in that same position. And that is such a big impact.
Just don't false start. No more pre-snap penalties, which is a league-wide thing. I know, and it's annoying as hell, but be more careful. Great stuff. Forno, where can people find your other work? A to Z Sports, I know, is one, and also your YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow me on Twitter at The Real Forno. All my Vikings and NFL draft work will be at A2Zsports.com, and The Real Forno Show every Monday and Wednesday night at 6:05. Judd, we're gonna have to figure out a time to get you on and shoot the breeze again. It's been a hot minute since we've been able to do that.
Absolutely. Text me. I'll be glad to jump on. Okay, Forno, Judd, AJ, we will see you next week on Meat and Potatoes.